Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? I think we can start now. Thank you to all the participants here, and a very good afternoon to you. And also to Sam Takwa. He's the first to wish and to put in the chat group a good afternoon wishes to all of us. Thank you, Sam Takwa. And well, today, I would like to welcome you all to our RDS Thursday webinar series entitled Housing Integrated Management System, What Housing Developers Need to Know. I am the moderator for today. My name is Chia Loong Thye. I am a partner of RDS, and I'm also the partner residing and practicing in the Penang office of RDS. I've been a lawyer for more than 37 years, and I'm very well versed in this topic of housing development, of which I've been practicing for the last 30 years. And today, together with my panel speakers, I would like to share with you this very new and what do you call it, system introduced by the government, which is called the Housing Integrated Management System, What Housing Developers Need to Know. And this is a single entry system which was developed by KPKT to replace BLESS, IDAMAN, and e-Pemaju. The audience here who are involved in housing development, especially the developers, will understand what is BLESS, IDAMAN, and e-Pemaju. But from 31st January 2022 onwards, they are now faced with this new system. So I have my two learned speakers here, my partners, to share with you what is the implication of this new system, which the government KPKT call Housing Integrated Management System. So before I begin to introduce the speakers to you, just a little bit of housekeeping rules. Kindly turn off your video and mute your microphone. And you have the opportunity to ask questions. And this is done by way of you submitting your text question. And there is a button at the bottom there under questions Q&A where you can type in your questions. We will try our very best to answer your questions towards the end of the presentation by my two speakers. All right, shall we begin? My first speaker is Ms. Ui Bee Hong. She's my partner in Kuala Lumpur office, and she's the head of the corporate and real estate transaction department in RDS. She is an alumni of National University of Singapore and was admitted and enrolled as an advocate and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Singapore as well as the High Court of Malaysia in 1987. Her areas of practice encompasses corporate and real estate transactions, as well as matters relating to foreign direct investment. She frequently advises on mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, commercial agreements, property developments, company law, and company restructuring. Bee Hong represents clients in a broad spectrum of corporate and commercial related transactions, with emphasis on foreign direct investments in Malaysia. And she has acted for a range of top-notch international clients, including corporations listed in the Forbes 500 in respect of the investment in Malaysia. So she will be our first speaker. Our second speaker is Ms. Tan Ge Im. She's my partner and she's also practicing in the Penang office of RDS. Ge Im's area of focus includes real estate transactions, corporate and commercial dealings, banking and finance, as well as wills and estate management. She is actively involved in housing development projects where she has rendered advice to all relevant parties and also drafted various agreements for the smooth running of the housing projects. GAIM is also experienced in matters related to banking and finance, having advised banking institutions together with the drafting of documentation pertaining to project financing, property finance, corporate banking, and bridging finance. And she has also reviewed and drafted sales or shares agreement, consultancy agreements, and joint venture agreements. So without much ado, I would like to call upon my partner, Bi Hong, to give the first part of the presentation on this topic, Housing Integrated Management System. So Bi Hong, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Loong Thye, for the introduction. So I will start with my presentation on the HIMS, yes, focusing on its impact on the housing developers, and also a little bit on the conveyancing practice, how it's impacted in Malaysia. That will be touched on by GAIM, and there will be also be a bit of explanation on what are the functions available on the HIMS portal for housing developers to use, yeah, moving forward. Okay, so what is this HIMS? It is a system introduced or implemented by the JPN under KPKT, and it incorporates all the elements of application, monitoring, enforcement, and data collection relating to housing developments in Malaysia. Yeah, so this system enables a developer to apply for the developers. Sorry. It enables the developer to apply for the developer's license and advertisement permits, which are separately through the system to be submitted. Yeah. Okay, so now each housing developer, you would know, will have one registered developer's license. Yeah, but under this system, each project under the housing developer would have to be updated and submitted to the system, and each will have a separate AP, yeah, for each project. And these APs will be added on to the database captured for the respective developer, with, of course, overriding one developer license as captured in the database of the HIMS. Yeah, so the DL, which is developer's license, and the advertisement and sale permits, the certificates can be generated through the HIMS once the JPN has verified and confirmed and approved the registration of such applications submitted by a housing developer. Yeah, for new housing developers, of course, they must obtain and register the developer's license first on the HIMS before they can proceed to submit the AP application for a new project. Yeah. Now, what other impact does it have? Yeah, so for housing developers, right? So all of them are required to generate their scheduled, relevant scheduled agreements, G, H, I, or J, under the regulations 1989 through the eSPA functions on the HIMS platform. Yeah. So housing developers must also update all their developer's license and AP information in the platform, and also ensure that what the eSPA or the electronic SPA as generated through the platform reflect all the latest information and details regarding a particular housing development project. Yeah. So it should be noted that any amendments to the scheduled SPA, either G, H, I, or J, the standard form agreement, can only be made, yeah, to the eSPA, and that is to be made, sorry, not can only be, but it will have to be made via the eSPA function, and for each particular project. Okay, and such amendments would have to be approved by the JPN before you can commence with, generating the relevant SPA for execution by the purchasers. Yeah, so housing developers or their lawyers, of course, can fill in the details of the development project, the personal information of the purchaser, and details of the units for sale under the eSPA function. This is just a timeline to give you an idea, and this is of course extracted from the PKPT, their manual and all that. As you can see, the HIM system, basically, which is intended to be like what Loong Thye mentioned just now, a single entry system to replace BLAS, IDAMAN, and e-Pemaju. So therefore, there is a timeline imposed for compliance by the housing developers. Yeah. So this system will be, the previous system like BLAS, IDAMAN, and e-Pemaju will be phased out in stages, as you can see from the timeline. Yeah. So in addition, just to point out that on 20th March, as you can see, it will be the second cutoff date. Yeah, I mean, of course, it was launched on the 31st of Jan, but 20th March is stated as the second cutoff date for BLAS, IDAMAN, and e-Pemaju systems to basically be phased out. Yeah. And between 21st to 27 March, all relevant data and attachments are to be extracted from the BLAS or IDAMAN system and migrated, to the HIMS. And this is stated that it has to be completed by 27 March. Yeah, of course, subject to any further extension of time to be given by KPKT, if any. Now, the impact of HIMS on existing housing developers. So, for example, a housing developer has an existing APDL license that's still valid on 31st Jan, because that was the date, the official launching or implementation of the HIMS. Yeah. So, assuming on that date, they still, the developer has an existing license and its project development comprises of, say, 500 units of terrace houses. On that date, assuming the developer has managed to sell 100 units already, and there is remaining 400 units yet to be sold. So question is, does the HIMS apply or impact such a housing developer? And what does such housing developer need to do? Yeah, so that would be the crux of the issue to be addressed. Now, according to KPKT, its FAQ as of 8 March, a housing developer in that scenario would have to make amendments to the AP through the HIMS portal, in order to update the information on the units. The 400 units are yet to be sold. And thereafter, they will have to continue with the processes prescribed under the HIMS. Yeah. Now, as far as registration on the HIMS, what are housing developers required to do? So for new developers, so they are, of course, required to apply for the developer's license, and they have to do it through the HIMS platform. Okay, so they will have to register on the platform and apply for the DL, developer's license, through the platform. Yeah, so information regarding one of the directors of the developer company would have to be provided and submitted, and the username and password, once the registration is successful, will be given to that particular director through his or her email address, to be provided as well on the HIMS. Yeah, so that is for new housing developers. They have to register on the platform. They will have to apply for the developer's license through the HIMS. As for existing housing developers who have already, an existing license and also a developer's code, then they can just proceed to register on the HIMS platform under Pindaan Lesen Pemajuan Perumahan tab, yeah, or the perbaharuan if that's applicable, yeah, in order to obtain a user ID. So according to KPKT, all existing APDL data will be extracted automatically from BLESS onto the HIMS portal when the registration takes place, yeah? All right. And once duly registered, the housing developer will receive the email verification on the successful registration through that particular director who's registered, yeah, whose details are registered. And once it's accepted and the developer has been registered, it will be able to access the HIMS portal on multiple devices at the same time using the same user ID. Now, application for developer's license for new housing developers. Briefly, I want to touch on what you need to do or submit, yeah? So for new housing developers, a fresh DL application is required through the platform. And when you apply for the new DL, of course, the developer is required to, instead of update all the material information and details, including the email address of the developer, all the telephone number, registered address and business address, all the important information as usual, yeah, the website and all the other details, board of directors, information and all, okay? Now, next I want to briefly touch on renewal of the housing developers license for existing housing developers. So application for renewal or amendment of the DL can be done online through the portal. And the housing developers would have to make such application at least, yeah, for the renewal, at least 60 days before the expiry date of the DL. Okay, so it's pertinent to note that any renewal must be submitted no later than 14 days before the expiry of the license. That is important to note, yeah. So while new DL developer's license, which is generated or applied through the portal, has a validity period of 5 years, housing developers may opt to renew their DL for either 3 years or 5 years. Okay, so any amendment to the DL can be done through the portal, yeah, together with any renewal of license, yeah, okay. And what are the fees payable that the developer has to pay for applying for DL or renewal? So as I mentioned just now, for the new DL, it will be for a duration of 5 years. Processing fee 50 ringgit. So basically 5 years, so 5,050. Renewal 3 or 5 years. Accordingly, yeah, it's either 3050 or 5050. Any amendment that you apply to be made through the portal, there is no fee, yeah, chargeable. And also in the event you wish to cancel any DL, no fee has been prescribed to be payable. Okay, next I want to touch quickly on application for termination or cancellation of a private housing developer's license. Okay, so through the portal, a developer will also be able to apply to terminate or cancel the DL. All right, so what you're required to do will be to upload an application for the termination letter, a letter for such application, I mean, and then whatever latest DL documents that needs to be submitted. So it's all in the manual which KPKT has prescribed, yeah, for the use of the HIMS. So all the detailed information, what to do, each step by step information that you need to know in order to use the various functions and modules on the HIMS is all prescribed in the manual that is issued by the KPKT. Yeah, so that if you go through that, you will know in detail what are the information and documents that you need to submit and also upload for these applications. All right, next. Through the HIMS, you will also need to use it if you require to apply for any advertisement permit. Yeah. So for the AP application, housing developers should take note of the relevant form, e-form that needs to be filled up, yeah, for the AP to be applied. Okay, so you need to submit information regarding the developer itself, its license, details of the land that the development is going to be constructed on, including, you know, the registered proprietor information, if there is any, you know, Bumi quota, all that would have to be submitted as well. Yeah, and of course, after submitting all those information, like, you know, including any planning permission, approval letter, other documents that need to be uploaded, approved plan, layout plan, you know, any copy of notice of commencement of work, Form B, any advertisement for brochures and approval letters, and for setting all the, you know, the price for the units, architect certificate, a whole list of documents would have to be submitted online and uploaded. Yeah. So after submitting all the relevant information and documents, if there's any inquiry by the relevant officer from JPN KPKT, such query will then, you know, there will be a highlighted in red, and the developer can then proceed to respond by amending the relevant, you know, information that is required to be submitted before they resubmit the form online. Yeah. Now, so application for the AP, yeah, once of course it's approved, then the developer would have to state or insert or input the financial information such as the HDA account as well, and also name and address of the bank, etc. And of course, the final step would be the payment of the advertisement and sales permit fee before the AP is issued through the HIMS portal. Yeah. So as you can see, there's a fees prescribed. For new AP, of course, depending on the years of development, for landed, if it's 24 months or 2 years, then of course you pay for 2 years, you'll be 1050. If it's for a strata title property, then it's for 3 years, the development required, the period of development required, then you pay for 3 years, and it will be 1550. Yeah, so for renewal, it can be done on an annual basis or year by year, and so the fee will be 550, including processing fee of 50 ringgit. All right, so any amendment to AP, it can be done online as well via HIMS, and no fee is chargeable or prescribed, and even for cancellation of the AP, there's no fee prescribed as well. Yeah. Okay, so the issuance of the DL and AP certificates will be generated through the HIMS portal. Okay, and the developer can do it by itself upon, of course, after payment of the applicable fee, and you know, and all approval has been given by JPN's Housing Developers Licensing Division. Now, through the HIMS, yeah, you can also make application for renewal and amendment of AP, which I've already touched on briefly just now. All right. Okay, so next I would like to quickly touch on the next point, which is application for termination of AP. If you wish to terminate an advertisement permit, you may do so and through the portal as well by uploading an application letter. Yeah. So similar to the other applications which I've touched on briefly just now, some examples of supporting documents would have already been mentioned, and all the other relevant requirements and documents are also prescribed and in detail on the HIMS portal, and you can seek guidance from the manual that I mentioned just now, issued by KPKT. Yeah, it's a step-by-step manual. And when, of course, when the application is approved, then the certificate of termination of AP will also be issued through the portal, and it can be downloaded and printed out by the housing developer. Okay, and do bear in mind, through the HIMS, you can also make an application to replace or change the HDA account if such situation arises. And it's like a two-phase or two-stage application if a developer wishes to replace or change a HDA account. Yeah. So in the first phase, you will have to insert or input the developer's code and all those mandatory information. Again, I would ask that you follow the KPKT's manuals closely, because it will give you all the details and information that you need to put in for this application. And definitely you need to give a good, a valid justification for such an application to change or replace the HDA account. Yeah. And the housing developer also is required to update any change in the bank account number on the portal. All right. Next, phase 2 of that application would involve the developer, printing out the approval letter and updating any HDA account details and uploading all the relevant documents, including a cover letter, yeah, and also enclosing the latest bank statement for the new bank, for the new HDA account, any payment slips, and also the confirmation of HDA, the old HDA account closure, yeah, by the previous bank. And through the portal, a housing developer can also make an application to withdraw any money, yeah, from the HDA account. Okay, so if there is any application, it can be done through the portal, and you are required to, of course, select the relevant project. If you have a few projects, fill in the relevant details relating to the particular development and also that particular housing developer account. Yeah, and supporting documents are also required to be submitted for such application, including any latest statement of account, any bank guarantee if there is any, and other relevant documents. Yeah. Okay, so that's all I would like to share on what you can do or what you are required to do under the HIMS system as implemented by JPN recently. Okay, so this is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions regarding the points which I've touched on, feel free to key in your questions in the Q&A pane of the control panel below, and I will address them during the Q&A session later on. So Loong Thye, back to you.
Thank you, Bihang, for such an elaborate and interesting description of this new HIMS system, and especially the the run through on the various topics mentioned there. I hope the audience and the developer will be able to pick up some of the points there. And I myself find that there's a piece of point there which I find it very interesting, is that the username and the portal is given to one director. So it means that that director will bear the responsibility of maintaining this online system. But anyway, that will be something that all developers have to take note, not just that point, but all other points. Now I want to move on to my second speaker for the day, Im. As I mentioned, she's my partner in Penang. So she will touch on another aspect of the HIMS system, especially on the issue about the sale and purchase agreement. Hi, Im.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chia. Hi, how is everyone? Thank you for attending our webinar today. Well, I was trying to sort out the issue. You see, I'm a bit yellowish today. I don't know what's going on. So sorry. So you can bear with me for that. Just focus on the slide. Don't look at me. Okay. Okay. Anyhow, Ms. Lee has actually focused on mostly on the licensing part. You know, the HA account, the reporting. You know, on all that. So for me, I will focus on more on the S&P. So we call it ESPA. So Mr. Chia and Ms. Lee have been so kindly to call it HIMS system. So I'm toying whether I should just say HIMS. So if you get me, if I just say HIMS, you know, just for short, so that I don't have to be, you know, so elaborate about the names.
All right, a lot of HIMS then.
Yeah, a lot of HIMS. I remember Mr. Chia said like, what is HIMS? So I was like, HIMS system. Okay, so let's start. So ESPA, even though the word E is used, it doesn't mean that, you know, it's an electrical form, you know, like how we generate some electric forms, you know, you just fill in online and then you just submit it. It's actually just an automated platform for you to generate your S&P. So it's not like, you know, I can key in, sign everything online and then just submit up. You still need to actually download it, physically get your purchasers to sign it, and then upload it into the system. So based on what we can see from the guidelines is that in the scheduled SPA, for example, there will be actually variable text field, you know, for you to fill in the names, your parcel, the price and all that. And of course, you know, you can certain items that you can amend, you know, certain things like the name of developer, proprietor, your APDL numbers, you know, your land details, or even your approved plans. So in the system, of course, there's only the scheduled S&P. So as we know, is the HDA, there's a schedule G, H, I, and J. So you will need to then generate from the system, and then you will only allowed to amend, like I said, in the allowed, there's actually a key icon that you can actually amend on. So those that you can't change, then you can't change it, right? So once you have actually keyed in the purchaser's information, and then you will then generate the S&P. And after the S&P is generated, after signing, you will need to upload it back into the system. But we will discuss how the things work. So as what Ms. Wing have discussed earlier, once you have applied for your APDL, all the information for the project will be in the system. So, and then you will use the system to generate the S&P. So to do that, you will first, of course, need to register the name of your purchasers before you can actually generate the S&P. So if you look at how it works, from the slide you can see, you will need to actually key in all the information, register your purchaser, download it, print it out, sign, and then upload in the system. That's how it generally works. Okay. Okay, so for registration of the purchaser, you will need to key in the purchaser's name, the IC, you know, the address and all that. The thing that you need to take note of is that you can only key in one purchaser details for each unit. I don't mean one as one name. So for example, one unit has two names, you can key in the two names, but you cannot key in a new purchaser until the current purchaser's information has been changed or updated. So which means that, let's say the existing purchaser's name is still there, it's not removed, you cannot generate S&P for your subsequent purchaser that take over. For example, if the loan has been called off and this purchaser number one says, okay, I don't want to buy anymore, you need to remove this current purchaser before you can actually key in the details of the new purchaser. So what we know now from the system is that in one SPA, currently you can key in only 6 names. So I'm not too sure if you have 8 purchasers or 10 purchasers in one S&P, whether you can accommodate that. But I guess based on practice, usually there will be not more than 6 purchasers. Okay. So next, after the registration, okay, you will generate the S&P. Okay. but there are some important notes that you need to take off, because when you actually register for APDL, there are actually prices that you need to key into the system. So I understand you have the submission price and you have the SPA price. So what they do is that once you generate your S&P, they will actually use the SPA's price for that unit, and it will automatically generate into your S&P, including all your information like the building plan approval, your APDL, they all will be in the eSPA. So if there's any change, you will need to update your pricing, or else, when you generate your S&P, it will be based on the previous pricing that you key in. So similarly, if there is a renewal for your advertising permit and whatnot, you will still need to actually update it in the system. Then you will capture it, and then your eSPA will have the new renewal permit number. If not, when you generate, it will be based on the old number or the wrong details, because you can't just change it on the thing. You need to update it, and then it will actually capture it, and then when you generate SPA, all the information will be there. Okay, so these are some of the important things that you need to take note of when you want to generate your S&P. So after generating S&P, of course, or you key in your name of your purchaser, there are other issues that you encounter. What if after you register this purchaser detail, but SPA is not signed, and then this purchaser say, hey, I want to cancel my purchase. So what we know so far is that no worries, you can actually update the registration of your purchaser in the purchaser registrations portal, the platform. So which means after you update it, then you'll be able to generate SPA for the subsequent purchaser. But even if after you have signed the S&P, uploaded the S&P, it can also still be cancelled. But of course, it's not as easy as just updating the purchaser's information for the system. You will actually need to make an application to KPKT first. So after approval has been granted, and that you will need to re-sign the S&P, you need then to upload the documents, the letter, and the rescission agreement to the platform. Only after that is done, which means sort of like your old SPA has been cancelled, then only you'll be able to generate a new S&P for your new purchaser. So from the look at it, with this new system where you need to actually get KPKT's approval first before getting your new purchaser to sign, it may, for developer, cause a delay, because sometimes you immediately want to secure your next unit and you want a new purchaser to sign as fast as you can. So from the look at it, since there is process in place and documents that you need to upload first, it's not as easy as, oh, you can sign the next day or things like that. This has to be done first before you can even generate the eSPA for the next purchase. Okay, so these are the things that we also need to take note of in terms of the cancellation of purchase moving onwards using the HIMS platform. Okay, of course, the next question is very important for developer is that what if I want to make any amendments to the SPA, because now it's generated everything in the system in the portal. Amendments or information key is actually restricted. So for example, if those clauses and schedules that have a pencil icon and that, yes, you can then amend in the HIMS system, and then you can update the information there. And if there's any error and typo, you can also do that in the system. But of course, the next point that developer always ponder is, of course, if there's amendment to the prescribed schedule S&P, for example, there's extension of time or certain things that you need to get approval. So similarly, you will need to get approval from the minister first. HIMS does not cater for you to get approval via the system. So what you have to do is actually you will need to apply manually maybe by email, before you actually can amend your S&P. And after the amendment has been done, you need to get approval and all that before you can actually generate your S&P. So for this, actually, KPKT has actually provided a slide. So maybe it will be clearer if we look at the slides. Okay. So for this slide, it's like a flow chart given by KPKT when you want to make any amendment to your S&P. Okay. So if you can see from the flow chart, okay, application must be done manually. So you see the word there, manually. So this clearly states that you cannot just make an application for your SPA to be amended via the HIMS platform. Okay. So from here, it seems like you have to email to them All right. So wait for the officer to check the application. So after checking the application, of course, whether there's query, no query, and then whether you get approval. So once approval is obtained, and we look at the next one, they will then give you a letter, the approval. With that, you need to upload in the system, and then you are allowed to make amendments to all your clauses in the SPA. Go back to the officer to get it checked and approved, right? So when the officer check whether there's any more query or not again, then grant the approval. Once approval is granted, they will give you the minutes and the letter of confirmation. And you will still need to upload the letter and the minutes and all that, in the HIMS system. Fill out the confirmation letter. And finally, then you're only able to generate the eSPA from HIMS. So this is actually the process you got to go through before you can actually do any amendments to your SPA. Okay, so that's the part on any amendments to be done. Okay. So it is quite simple and straightforward in terms of how the process works for you to generate the SPA. I think the main issue is before you actually finalize the SPA, all these steps will have to be done first. For example, key in all your information, your advertising permit, your developer license, getting all your land details correct, your building plans approval, your pricing, and then finally looking into the SMP and what are the process that you want to apply to get approval before doing the amendments. Finalize your final eSPA before going to the next step to key in your purchaser information and start downloading it for your purchaser to sign. So it looks like with this HIMS system, there's a lot of preparation you have to be done in the system before you can finally start downloading your eSPA to get the signing start rolling. Okay, so after the amendments has been done, then we will look into the next more practical questions, whether there's any changes to the conveyancing practice. So if you can see, I think from what Ms. Wei has also introduced to us from the beginning, is that it's actually just a platform for the KPKP to manage and regulate the housing developments. So like everything in one platform, one-stop center for you to get your license approved, for you to renew your license, for you to submit your application to withdraw your HDA money account, for you to generate SPA, even your reporting. So I understand that quarterly the developer will need to submit the report, so that HIMS system also cater for that. So from the HIMS system, we can see that actually there's no changes to the conveyancing practice. There's no amendment to the Housing Development Act. There's no amendment to the regulations. So everything is still the same in the Act, right? So HIMS seems to be merely just an administrative process where you just have to use a system moving onwards for all your projects, okay? So it also means that, it doesn't do away with your need. For example, if you have mixed development, right? You need a deed of mutual covenant, or stratified development, you still need a deed of mutual covenant. And your general practical processes like letter of confirmation from developer, undertaking from developer, and of course, depending on your project, whether there's a rebate letter, promotion letter, or any consent that's required. Well, HIMS actually don't cater for the needs beyond the eSPA, because SPA is actually a requirement under the HDA. That's why you need to use a prescribed standard SPA in the HDA. With the other documents are depending on the type of projects and what is required for the project. So it doesn't change that requirement. Okay. So if you can see also, HIMS does not change the legal landscape between the solicitor and developer. So both the purchaser and developer, as provided for in the HDA, they still have the rights to retain their own solicitor, and then they will sign the SMP, print out, stamp it, and all these processes are still the same. So as what Mr. Chia also highlighted just now is that, yes, the directors will be given the username and password. And it also has mentioned that actually the password can be your username and password can be also used on multiple devices. So in that, I think lawyers can also, if you're given the right to log in and all that, we can also help to generate SPA, or your staff can also generate the SPA, provided all the initial step finalizing the e-SPA has been done initially. Okay. So what we understand now is that, yes, lawyers or solicitors are not provided for registration of HIMS yet, but we understand from the circular from our Malaysian bar is that the conveyancing practice will actually propose a radar to actually try to get KPKT's approval to issue username and password to legal HIMS as well. Because I'm sure that lawyers, it is better for lawyers to get involved with the e-SPA or to help assist a developer in this aspect. Okay, so it is in terms of e-SPA, it is quite straightforward. So that's all in terms of my presentation for today. So we will move on to the Q&A session, Mr. Chia. So now 15 minutes to go.
Thank you, Kim, for that very interesting presentation on the practical aspect arising from this HIMS. And I think hopefully the audience and the developers will take note that there are certain things that may affect the way you practice, especially when you talk about change in the name of the purchaser. No? This one a little bit tricky now in the sense that you will have to get the approval first to change the name, and then only then you can add on a new purchaser there. So the other aspect of this, what they call HIMS affecting the practice, is that all this is done through the system, and the user and the password is given to the developer. So GAME has given a possible solution as to how the lawyers can still be involved as in the past in preparing the SPA and to fill in the names of the purchasers and the unit numbers of this thing. That is, if the developer can also share the username and the password with the lawyer involved in the SPA. So these are things that maybe as we move along, trying to understand this HIMS system, maybe the developer and the lawyers will have to do something along that line. No? Of course, the Bar Council went one step further to even ask the KPKT to even give the user and password to the lawyers directly instead of going through the developer. So hopefully our speakers have given you some insight as to this new system. And I'm sure, like all things, when things are new, there'll be a lot of teething problems and how to use it. So I guess the developer and the KPKT will have a lot of communication amongst themselves to iron out some of the obstacles, some of the difficult aspect of this system. No? And hopefully with all these exchanges between the developer and the KPKT, there'll be more improvement to the system. All right, with that, I will just take a few questions here. I see some questions here from the question answers. There's one from Mr. Simon Wu. It says that if the project is launched under a master title, how do we fill in the preamble 1 and 2 under Schedule G? I think that this question which also applies in the old system, but nevertheless, Gaim, you want to answer this?
Yeah, sure. I think it will be when you get your APDL, I think the master title will be also recorded when you apply for your developer license. So what we understand is that the SPA also will be generated directly from that information. So if you key in your master title at that point, there will be master title. But eventually, if you are saying that under Schedule G, your individual title has been issued, then I think you will probably need to update the system for you to be able to generate the e-SPA for the particular unit, based on the individual title. I can see, Mr. Chia, that some of the questions you have also answered, I think, in terms of, let me see.
There's one which I think you mentioned, but it's asked by one of the audience here regarding the change of schedule of SPA under EOT. I think it means extension of time, and Schedule 3. What is the process? I mean, do you still go through HIMS? I think you touched on it, but maybe you'd like to answer this gentleman here or this lady here.
Yeah, okay. Because under the ESPA, only the one with the key icons are the details that you can change. So extension of time are technically only allowed to change once you get the minister's approval. So which means you have to fall back into the manual application to get the minister's approval first. Once with the approval, upload it in the system, like what I mentioned just now, the letter of confirmation, letter of approval, before you can actually amend the SPA. With that, then you'll only be able to generate with the new SPA with the extension of time. So anyhow, sadly, it's not like a one-stop center where you can even get approval via the HIMS system. It seems like you still need to go manually, get the approval, get the letter, upload it in the system, and manage the system, get approval again, then before you can generate. So it's just go to HIMS to settle all your issues.
That's why this is where there could be delay, because if the officer doesn't give you the answer promptly, then you cannot move on to the replacement purchaser.
Precisely, correct. It will take some time for sure.
Right. So there's one here about from Mr. Loong Thye, Bihong. He says that if there is a Bumi quota release, do we need to update it in the HIMS system? And
since yes, I mean there is the module or the function on the HIMS which applies to you having to submit information if there are any Bumiputra quota. So likewise, if there's any release, it would have to be done through the system, I would think. Yeah.
That's right. So there's one more here. There's two questions concerning cancellation. It says here, when developer want to cancel a particular transaction, is there a need to give a justification to the KPKT as to the reason for the cancellation? Is it provided for in the HIMS, or it's just an automatic thing? The KPKT will just cancel it and then you can proceed with the next purchase. You need to give a justification.
Yeah, but what we can see from the guidelines given by KPKT on the HIMS, it seems like you will need to give a justification. They won't just outright just cancel it without any justification given. And of course, if the SMP has been signed, like I said, you probably need to give the rescission agreement and all that also.
There's one related to that, and it says from this Chan Ming Chuan, do we need KPKT's officers' approval to cancel the unit if the SPA is signed but not stamped?
I think if you haven't generated the system, which means that you have not uploaded your signed and stamped SMP, there will be not a record on the signed SPA. So there's no need to actually rescind the agreement and whatnot. I believe by updating the information of purchaser should be sufficient.
Thank you. That's all. There's one interesting question which I have for you all is concerning what they call the signing of the SMP. Now, as the SMP is now generated through the system, and whenever all the information is there, you have to download it. How does it affect, or rather, does HMIS have anything to say about e-signing or judicial signing, that kind of thing? Or Bihong, you want to answer that?
Yeah. So
virtual signing, the kind of thing, it's as HMIS deals with that.
No, I think the HIMS, it does not resolve this issue of an e-signatures or e-witnessing or digital signature issues. Yeah, I mean, of course, everyone knows, the recent pandemic and MCO and all the lockdowns. Of course, it would, if it resolves, it will be good. But we don't think so, because you see, take for example, e-witnessing. The law with regards to this issue appears to be uncertain, because the existing applicable law is silent as to, you know, the circumstances when this kind of witnessing, e-witnessing, will be legally valid. Yeah. So in a majority of cases, when witnessing the signature to a document, right? So the witness will attest to being in the presence of the person who signs the document. So question is, does, you know, watching someone sign a document on a computer screen remotely, you know, and when that person is not really in the same room as the witness, you know, I mean, our view is that it's unlikely to be considered signing in the presence of the signatory. Yeah. So in any event, I think when it comes to this issue, we would advise that, you know, you seek before you resort to, you know, adopting e-signature or e-witnessing. Of course, best thing is you should seek legal independent advice, yeah, before you do that.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah, basically, but to add that also, like what we said, there's no amendment to the prescribed schedule as well. So in the present, witnessing is still required based on the current SMP.
All right, thank you. There's one question about lawyers here. Can the developer appoint the solicitors to generate the ESPA in the HIMS system? I think that was answered earlier, right? In the presentation.
Yes.
Okay. So one interesting question that also arose is the implication of this HIMS in relation to the HDA Act and the HDA regulations. So what happens if there's, does it in any way affect the regulations, HDA regulation? And if no, what happens if there's some inconsistency between HIMS system and those stated in the regulation?
If I could take that question. Yeah. So I think as far as we know, the HDA 1966 and the regulations 1989, there has been no amendments, yeah, made to provide for this HIMS system. I mean, in fact, this HIMS system basically is more an administrative initiative by the Ministry of Housing and Local Government, and with the object of, you know, regulating, managing, and also engaging housing developers in relation to you know, what we have covered earlier, relating to applying for the license, applying for AP, you know, renewing AP, renewing the license. And of course, the other thing is their intention is also they want to receive and gather data relating to housing development. Therefore, that's why you see that they also want the ESPA to be in the picture, whereby information relating to the developers' purchases, the units, the prices, and all that, all those data would be gathered by the government. Yeah, so that is the objective. So far, no amendment has been made to the act or the regulations.
All right, thank you. Gaim, you want to add anything to that?
No, basically very private because it's mainly for administrative purposes. There's currently no any amendments done to HDA. All the applications still applicable.
Thank you. There's one more question from Gary Quay. With HIMS only allowing the designated unit pricing as uploaded to be stated in the ESPA, and no longer possible to cater for discounts given on the pricings for the units being sold. So basically, I think the question of what happened when there's a discount given on the pricing. Game and
I think similarly as if there's any change in the details of the project, it including the SPA price or APDL, you will need to update in the HIMS system. So if you update your price, I believe the eSPA will generate based on the SPA pricing that is updated into the record. Because of course, sometimes you give discounts, sometimes the prices increase if your project is selling very well. So this is expected, in terms of the project development or project sale. So you will be able to cater, because we understand from the guidelines is that you will need to update in the HIMS system to capture those information.
Yes. So I must say sorry to all the participants here. There are so many questions. I can see from my screen here, easily the 19 questions here. I'm very sorry we will not be able to answer all your questions, but we will take note of them, and we will, if you got email, we are able to send your question to us through email, and we will be able to provide whatever answer we can and do our very best to answer your questions. So we have, I also must thank the audience. We have registered nearly 300 participants, which means that a lot of people are interested in this topic, and certainly so. And I hope that this will not be the end of the discussion on this topic. And if you feel that there's something which we RDS can assist you, feel free to call us or email to us, and we will certainly do our very best to assist you to go through this HIMS system smoothly. Thank you very much. And speakers, do you have any last any last statement to make before I end off the sessions? All right. So if nothing, thank you once again, and have a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and hope to see you all virtually in our RDS every fortnight Thursday webinar. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.